Hi, I'm Derek Desjardins, and this is the Lectory Perilous. This is going to be my second installment of the video series Partial Public Education, in which I point out a topic that your child is highly unlikely to encounter in an American public school setting, but is probably pretty important for a fleshed out cultural literacy. Now remember, the purpose of this channel is not to be deeply instructive in these topics, but rather to point out a potential gap so that you can make a plan for yourself or for your child to fill in some of the gaps and maybe increase the connections. Now today I'm going to be talking about something called the Axial Age, and I'm going to be talking about a religion that emerged during the Axial Age called Jainism. Axial Age was a term that was coined by the German philosopher Karl Jaspers to describe a time period between around 800 BC and 200 BC, in which in certain geographical locations around the world, these enormous shifts in consciousness took place that laid down the tracks for major changes in the way humans see themselves in their relationship to the world, philosophically and religiously. So for example, in Greece, you had the emergence of the rationalist and empiricist philosophical traditions. In the Levant, you get the Judaic prophetic tradition. In Persia, you have Zoroastrian monotheism. In China, you have Confucianism and Taoism. These are just to name a few. And in India, you have the emergence of two important dharmic religions, Buddhism and Jainism. Now, Jainism is a major world religion. It has about 5 million adherents, so not a large number. However, I'm going to argue that it's a very consequential religion, and I hope to point out why in a couple of minutes. Now, the most important figure in Jainism is the 24th spiritual teacher called Mahavira. Now, these spiritual teachers, I'm going to try my best, are called Tirthankaras. Mahavira was the 24th Tirthankara, probably lived around 600 BC, so right during this Axial Age, and he is considered basically the most important spiritual teacher in this tradition. Now, Jainism has its own epistemology, has its own ontology, its own ethical system, it has its own scriptures, it has its own rituals. But it's one of its 5 major precepts, ahimsa, which means nonviolence, that I think has the most resonating effects in our lives. It's well known that Mahatma Gandhi, the leader of the campaign for Indian independence, he was greatly influenced by Jainist philosophy. And this is partially due to his mother, but also partly due to the fact that he resided in the western part of India. And this principle of nonviolence was central to the movement toward Indian independence and was later adopted by Martin Luther King Jr. So these Jainist principles have really traveled down through the ages to have really massive effects on both the British Empire and on American society. And I would venture to say that most Americans have virtually zero idea about what Jainism is. It's important to learn about world religions, but as you can imagine, this is something that most public school teachers don't want to touch. It's not in most of the standards. It's very dangerous territory because you could be seen as proselytizing, or you could be seen as misinterpreting a religion. So probably it's a better topic for home study under your guidance. Insofar as books that pitch world religions down the middle for kids, this is the best book I've found. This is the Kids Book of World Religions, written by Jennifer Glossop. And I really enjoyed the way they present the information here. It's, as far as it can be, it's a pretty neutral presentation. Now, so for example, here's your page on Jainism, and there are the teachings and beliefs, some historical background, festivals, and important facts about Jainism. If you know anything about history, you can't understand anything about the founding of the United States. You can't understand anything about anything that happened during the Middle Age period, the modern period of Europe, you can't understand anything that happened in the entire history of the world without understanding something about philosophical, spiritual, and religious beliefs. Okay, regardless of your own beliefs, it's kind of important to understand where other people are coming from and how these integrate and syncretize with other systems. So let's do a timelining activity. We're going to place the Axial Age and we're going to place Mahavira on the timeline. And then hopefully you can get out there and start doing a little research on your own. Go ahead and grab yourself a piece of paper, a ruler, and a pencil, and I'll see you in a second. All right, so if you watched the first video in my series, I already showed you how to make a timeline like this, so I'm not going to go over that again. However, I don't think it's a bad idea to go back and review concepts you've done already. So if you recall, we did the Ottoman Empire last time, which was about 1300 to about 1923. Now remember, this is a living document. You can make it as detailed as you want to. You can measure. I think review is very important. So we have the Ottoman Empire here. And then remember we had Suleiman right around there. Okay, so that is just kind of give us a little bit of perspective. All right, let's get ourselves over to the Axial Age. So we're talking about 800 BC to around 200. All right, so between 500 and our imaginary zero mark, we talked in the last video why there is no zero mark here. Halfway between will be 250 years. So really to go to 200, we'll just go a little past the halfway mark. Here you go. And then 800, this will be convenient because halfway is going to be 750. We'll just go a little further than halfway here. Okay, so according to Jaspers, this is the Axial Age. Now, if you go online and look up Axial Age, get ready to go down a rabbit hole because people have pretty strong opinions about whether the Axial Age even existed, when it would begin, when it would end. The number of thinkers you can fit into this time period is, it's pretty much out there. There's lots and lots of names that go inside the Axial Age. In fact, you could expand the 600-year time period to be its own timeline, which is probably not a bad activity, and then start placing some of those very, very important thinkers, you know, Pythagoras, Isaiah, Thales, Confucius, Zarathustra. I mean, the list goes on and on and on. All right, so where are we going to place Mahavir? So this is 500, 750, 600. We're going to place Mahavir right here. So now we have our first opportunity to compare time periods. Okay, and this is over time what makes people develop cultural literacy. It's not any single thing standing alone, it's the combination of them. So remember, timelines are living documents. Feel free to mark them up any way you want to. I did this one pretty quick and dirty, but you can take as much time as you want. You can change your intervals. I think comparing and contrasting is always good. I'm going to talk more about that later on, but are there any meaningful comparisons or differences between Suleiman and Mahavir? Maybe, maybe not, but it's just starting to think about this that is really the origin of the complexity that gets you thinking much more deeply about topics. So there you go. Brief introduction to the Axial Age. Brief introduction to Jainism, especially as articulated in its most important thought leader, Mahavir. Go out there and teach. Docendo discitur.